إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمد عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, to proceed. Before we begin the lesson, just want to make 2 points. The first, as one of our diligent observers who follow the lessons online mentioned, that when I wrote the ayah in Surah Luqman, where Luqman alayhi salam advised his son, and he said towards the end of his advice, وَاقْصِدْ فِي مَشِيكَ وَاغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ, I wrote on the board فَإِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ, and that fa is not present in Al-Quran, so that was a mistake. So the first point to note, therefore, that in that ayah it states إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ and not fa. The second point is that as some of the content of these lessons, it might be slightly difficult or unusual, different, particularly for students who have not studied these types of texts before. Therefore, it's very important that if you do not understand something, that you say it, that you mention it, and there is no harm in asking, or rather repeatedly asking, if a matter is not clear. Rather, that is from the Salaf, those who came before. In fact, al-Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih in Kitab al-Ilm, he mentioned Babun, that there's an entire chapter in Kitab al-Ilm. Man sami'a shay'an, whoever heard a matter, man sami'a shay'an faraja'ahu, and then he returns back to it, he questions about it, hatta ya'rifahu, until he understands it. So he has an entire chapter in Kitab al-Ilm that he devotes to this issue of asking when you do not know a matter. Then he mentions a narration of Ibn Abi Mulaika that Aisha radiyallahu anha kanat la tasma'u shay'an, that she never heard a matter, la ta'rifuhu, that she was not aware of, faraja'at fihi, that she would then ask about it, hatta ta'rifa, until she knew about it, or she was aware of it, meaning she would question it. So that's a very important matter. So to continue, therefore, in our previous lesson we mentioned what al-kalamu according to the grammarians is, and they said, Yanum al-Haq, al-kalamu huwa al-lafdhu al-murakkabu al-mufidu, and then
the last one,
bil-wad'i. Right, so they said that al-kalamu, it is a statement upon the tongue.
Yep,
right? So what's excluded from that is an ishara, and a sign or something that you indicate with. that's excluded. And what's excluded from that too is that which is written. Right? So al-lafdhu. Al-murakkabu. So it must be comprising of 2 or more words. Al-mufidu. That it must contain a beneficial meaning. Meaning that when we hear it, then we're content with what we've heard and we don't seek any further words or clarification. Bil wad'i, and that it has to be in the Arabic language. So al-mu'allifu ibn Ajrum rahimahullah, he then continued and mentioned wa ya annamul haq
wa aqsamuhu.
Right. Wa aqsamuhu
Salasatun.
Thalathatun. Wa aqsamuhu thalathatun. Meaning, and aqsamuhu, its categories. Aqsamun is the al-jam'u, the plural of qismun. So the singular is qismun and the plural is aqsamun. And we say thalathatun, 3. And the reason why it's thalathatun is because, do you remember the rule relating to being opposite in gender?
Yeah.
Right? So the number is opposite in gender to the ismun. The ismun, qismun is mudhakkarun, male, therefore the word has to be female. So aqsamuhu thalathatun, its categories or divisions. What? Whose categories or divisions? Al-kalamu. It is 3. And they are
Ismun wa fi'lun wa harfun ja'a li ma'nan. So he said, rahimahullah, that its divisions are 3. The first being ismun, the second being fi'lun, the third being harfun. So we know that ismun is a noun, fi'lun is a verb, and harfun, we'll leave harfun as it is, because there is no single definition in English that represents that particular word. Ja'a li ma'na, and it is a harfun relating to a harfun here. Ja'a li ma'na, meaning it contains a meaning. Right? And we're going to explain that in a moment. First of all, this pen will help. This one. Right. So, first of all, what is an ismun? How do the grammarians define ismun? What is its ta'arifun, its definition? Ya Namul Haq. What would you define an ismun to be? Name.
Right, the name of something. Right? Whether it's the name of a person. Right? Say Muhammadun. And in a grammar, the name of a person, they give it the name of alamun. Alamun. Right? So whether it's the name of a person, such as Muhammadun, or a place, such as Makkatu, or an object such as qalamun. So if I say to you, Ya Namul Haq, هذا قلم. What does that mean? هذا قلم. This is a pen. If I say قلم, a pen, then you know, regardless of whether I'm holding it or not, you know that that word قلم, it relates to a meaning which is known. Right? And that's important. Why? Because they say that an ismun is kalimatun. Kalimatun means a word. Dallat ala ma'na. So it's kalimatun dallat ala ma'na, a word that indicates a meaning, right? في نفسها في نفسها. Right? So ismun is a kalimatun, a word. Dallat ala ma'nan. It relates to a meaning. Fi nafsiha. By itself it relates to a meaning. So if we say qalamun or babun or jidarun or sa'atun, all of them relate to a meaning which is known. That word itself does. That is a meaning of ismun. Fi'lun, rather we need to mention another point here in order to differentiate it with fi'lun, and we have to say wa lam taqtarin bi zamani. Right, now it's complete. Walam taqtarin, meaning taqtarin or iqtarana means connected. Lam taqtarin means it's not connected bizamani, with time. Right, al-makani is time. So the meaning therefore is a word which indicates a meaning by itself. وَلَمْ تَقْتَرِنْ بِالزَّمَانِ. It's not connected to time, is it? No. If I say qalamun, that is a qalamun. And it's always a qalamun. Right. So the second part is fi'lun. Fi'lun. So what therefore is a fi'lun? If I say to you, Ya Alim al-Haq, katabtu, it means I wrote. Aktubu,
I read.
Aktubu, aktubu, taktubu, yaktubu. It's a present tense, right? So katabtu is
Past tense.
I wrote. Aktubu is
I wrote.
I am writing.
I'm writing it. Present.
Sa'aktubu,
I will write.
sawfa aktubu.
I will write.
Right. So I mentioned 4 words there. Katabtu, I wrote. The past tense. Al-Madi. Aktubu, I am writing. Al-Mudari'u, the present. Sa'aktubu,
I will write.
I will write. Al-Mustaqbalu, Al-Qarib, meaning the close future. Wa sawfa aktubu, meaning I will write the distant future. So, if I say any of these 4, what do we know? We know it is a kalimatun. Kalimatun. Dallat ala ma'na. Does it indicate a meaning?
Yeah.
Yes. Dallat ala ma'na. Right?
It indicates a meaning. Does it indicate a meaning in itself?
Yeah.
Yes. في نفسها. نفسها. Right. Is it connected to a time?
Only future one.
No, يا عالم الحق. If I say كتبت or أكتب or سأكتب or سوف أكتب, is it connected to a time period?
No.
يا عالم الحق. It is. كتبت, I wrote in the past.
Yeah. And that's
أكتب, I'm writing now in the present. سأكتب in the future. So it is connected. وتقترن بصيغتها, we say بصيغتها. Sighatun means in its form. So those are all different forms, aren't they?
Sira.
Katabtu is the past form, isn't it? Aktubu is a present form. So بصيغتها للزمان. Right. So the difference between an ismun and a fi'lun is that both of them are words that indicate a meaning in themselves. But the difference being is that an ismun has no connection to a time period, whereas a fi'lun is connected to a particular time, whether it's the past, the present, or the future. Right? So then we have harfun. Harfun. So what is a harfun? It is a kalimatun. We know that. Right? It indicates a meaning. Dallat ala ma'na. Right? It indicates a meaning. If I say fi, it means right. It's commonly used to mean in. If I say ala,
On top. Yeah.
commonly used to mean on top. If I say bi, it's commonly used to mean with or in. So it does indicate a meaning. However, we don't say fi nafsiha. We say fi ghayriha. Fi ghayriha. And that will become apparent in a moment. Fi ghayriha. Why do we say fi ghayriha? Why is a harfun considered to be kalimatun dallat ala ma'na fi ghayriha, in something else? So the meaning of it becomes manifest in something else.
It's not nafsi. It can't itself meaning.
Right, but why is that? A simple example is if I say safartu min Makkah ila Britannia. Safartu min Makkah ila Britannia, which means
I
traveled
from Makkah
to Britain.
Yeah.
Right? That min there, even though it's connected to makan, it's makani, it's connected to a place, right? From one place to another, right? Like the ayah at the beginning of Surah Al-Isra, Subhanalladhi asra biyabdihi laylan min al-masjid al-harami ila masjid al-aqsa, right? From Masjid al-Haram
to Masjid al-Aqsa. So we have two haruf al-jar or harfa al-jarri there. We have min and ila. The min in that example and the one that I mentioned both relate to from.
From, yeah.
Right? But remember, تاجر الحديد وجاره وعنده طن من الحديد. Remember, وعنده, and with him, طن.
Loss of ton.
No, طن, 1 ton,
Tons.
من الحديد. Right? That's what it is, isn't it? طن من الحديد. Right. Can you see the use of min here?
Yeah.
It's not the same.
No.
This min, they say, its purpose is a tab'id, meaning to describe some. Right? A portion of.
Portion.
That's what you're saying in effect, aren't you? You're not saying that this ton is from, i.e. coming from, al-hadid. You're saying it's a portion of. And similarly, you will find that in many of al-haruf, the true meaning can only be derived by looking at what it affects.
Yeah.
Like in those examples. Safartu min Makkata. So the Makkah indicates that I'm coming from. Right? Tannun min al-hadidi. Al-hadid indicates it's a portion of.
Yeah.
Right? That this ton is a portion of this hadid.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why they say fi ghayriha. Right? And there are numerous other examples that were mentioned when we come to it. So, is that clear, the difference between ismun wa fi'lun wa harfun?
Yeah.
Right? The next point to note is ja'a li ma'na. Ja'a li ma'na. What does that mean? It means that al-muallif, the author, Ibn Ajrum, alayhi rahmatullahi, he wanted to differentiate between two types of harfun, literally letters. And they are the haruf al-ma'ani wal haruf al-mabani. Right, haruf al-ma'ani and haruf al-mabani. What's the difference? Haruf al-ma'ani are the haruf that do contain a meaning, even if they become manifest in a different word, such as min and fi and qad and so on and so forth. The ones that we commonly understand. Haruf al-mabani don't have a meaning. They don't contain a meaning. Why? Because they're simply letters. Like alifun, adba'un, and ta'un, and tha'un, etc. and all 29. By themselves, they don't contain a meaning.
No.
Right? So, if I say kafun, ta'un, alifun, ba'un, individually, these are from the alphabet. And they're considered to be haruful mabani. They're the letters that we use in order to construct words. As opposed to huruful ma'ani, letters that do, or haruf, that do contain a meaning. This is the problem when we translate harfun as letter in English, because in Arabic it doesn't just mean that. In Arabic, haruful jarri are not individual letters, are they?
No.
Min, fi, ila, ala, they're not individual letters. Qad, inna, and so on and so forth. So the author, rahimahullah, he mentioned harfun ja'a li ma'na. It is a harfun that does contain a meaning, even if that meaning, as we demonstrated on the board, becomes manifest in the word that follows it. Right? Is that clear what that means? وَحَرَفٌ جَاءَ لِمَعْنَا. Right. So once we've understood these three
aspects. What does the author rahimahullah mean when he says وَأَقْسَامُهُ ثَلَاثَةٌ, and its division are three? What that means is that if we examine the kalam al-Arab, the speech of the Arabs from the beginning, then you will find that their speech in its entirety, what they use in order to construct their speech, can be divided into these three categories. Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah, in his explanation of al-Ajrumiyyah, in the beginning he mentions that there is no evidence in Al-Quran or in the Sunnah that indicates that al-kalamu, speech, is three categories. These three, ismun wa fi'lun wa harfun. There is no ayah in Al-Quran, no hadith in the Sunnah which indicates this of these three categories. So how did the grammarians determine that it's these three? By a principle called at-tatabbu wa al-istiqra', meaning a careful analysis and organization or codification of their analysis that gave rise to these three different types, right? So the speech of the Arabs was analyzed in its entirety, and it was found that their words do not exit except from these three categories. But does that mean all speech contains these three types? If I say to you, Ya Anim al-Haq, قد قام زيد, قد قام زيد. What does قد قام زيد mean? قام means he stood. Zaydun is the alamun, the ismun, Zayd.
Names.
Right? The grammarians will often use this name Zaydun to illustrate their examples. Very common. So قد قام زيد. قد is حرف تحقيق. حرف تحقيق, meaning of accomplishment. That's why you say قد قامت الصلاة, right? قد, it's also used for tawqid, emphasis, and it enters upon a fi'lun, right? So قد قام زيد, meaning indeed or certainly Zayd stood, right? قد is out of these three categories, harfun, right? It's clearly not an ismun, and it's not a fi'lun. Qad is a harfun. Qama is a fi'lun, and Zaydun is an ismun, right? So we said that qad is harfu tahqiqin. Qama fi'lun madin mabniyun ala al-fathi. Zaydun is fa'ilun. Zaydun fa'ilun marfu'un wa alamatu raf'ihi tanweenu dammin. Right? Qad qama Zaydun. So it comprises of all three. If we say qama Zaydun, actually we should ask, Ya Anim al-Haq, qad qama Zaydun, does that fulfill the definition of al-kalamu according to the grammarians?
Yeah.
Yes, alhamdulillah, it does. Right, so that's fine. We'll place a tick next to it to illustrate. Now, qama Zaydun. Qama Zaydun. So we've dropped the harfun, right?
So قام, as we know, فعل ماض مبني على الفتح. زيد is فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفعه تنوين ضمه. Right? What does this now mean? قام زيد.
Zaid stood.
Zaid stood. Right? So this time we only have a fi'lun and
Fa'ilun.
yeah, we have a fi'lun, but in terms of ismun wa fi'lun wa harfun,
Is it fi'lun and ismun?
right, we have a fi'lun and an ismun. We have a fi'lun and an ismun. We don't have a harfun. Right? So even though he said rahimahullah wa aqsamahu thalathatun, it doesn't mean that all kalam is going to comprise of these three parts. It just means what is present is going to be one of these three. Right? So qama zaydun, is that al-kalamu inda nuhat amongst the grammarians? Qama zaydun. Does it give us, is it al-lafdhu?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it al-murakkabu?
Yeah.
Is it al-mufidu?
Yeah.
Yes. So yanmul haq, it is.
It is.
Right? So that's fine too. Now, if we now say Zaydun qa'imun. Zaydun qa'imun. What does Zaydun qa'imun mean?
Is it arriving?
No, that's qadimun. Qadimun is arriving. Qa'imun is from qama. It's the ismu fa'il of qama, which, so therefore it means not al-masdar. So what does it mean? If it's the doer of qama, what does it mean? Standing. Right? Zaydun qa'imun, meaning
Standing.
yeah, the full sentence.
Zaid standing.
Zayd is standing. Right? So now Zaydun is
It's an ismun.
it's an ismun marfu'un, right? Alamatu raf'ihi tanweenu raf'in. Right? What type of word is this? What type of sentence is this now?
It's jumla.
Al-jumlatul ismiyah. Therefore Zaydun is
Ismun.
al-mubtada'u. Right? So it says Zaydun ismun marfu'un wa alamatu raf'ihi tanweenu dhammin. I said tanweenu raf'in before, didn't I? Tanweenu dhammin mubtada'un. It's mubtada'un, right? Qa'imun is
al-khabru.
al-khabru, which is also an ismun, also marfu'un, also the indicator of it being marfu'un is tanweenu dhammin. Khabarun, it's a khabar. So Zaydun qa'imun yanmul haq, is that al-kalamu according to our definition? Zaydun qa'imun.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But this time yanmul haq, of these three, ismun wa fi'lun wa harfun, Zaydun qa'imun are both?
No.
What?
Not three of them in there, just two of them.
Which two are in there?
No harf there.
There's no harfun. So you said two are there. So which two are there?
Ismun and fi'lun.
Right, and ismun. Which one is ismun?
No, both ismun actually.
Right, you just changed this. Right, both of them are ismun, aren't they?
Yeah.
There is no fi'lun.
Fi'lun, yeah.
Zaydun is an ismun. Qa'imun is an ismun. Both of them are, right? Now, the fact that both of them are an ismun does not mean that it's incorrect. It just means that our kalamun here only comprises of an ismun. So you understand this point, وَأَقْسَامُهُ ثَلَاثَةٌ. It doesn't mean that al-kalamu must comprise of all three. So if we now say, Ya namul haq,
Zaydun. What does Zaydun mean?
Yeah. Zaid.
A person's name. It does have a meaning, but the point is it's a person's name. Right. So which one is it? Ismun or fi'lun or harfun? It's an ismun. Zaydun is an ismun. But there's only one word there. So is Zaydun, according to our definition of al-kalamu, kalamun? Is it? I say Zaydun.
Is it kalam?
Ya animal haq. I say Zaydun.
No.
It's not.
It's not. It's something else should be.
It's not. It is a lafdhu. It's been articulated upon the tongue. That's correct. It is a lafdhu. Is it al-murakkabu? No. Is it al-mufidu?
No, doesn't make sense. No.
No. If I say to you Zaydun or Muhammadun or Bilalun,
Wait something.
yeah.
Say something.
What about it?
Yeah.
Right. So that Zaydun is not al-kalamu according to our definition. So we place an X next to it. Right? Is that clear?
Yep.
Any questions so far?
So first the al-kalamu.
Al-kalamu.
That's 4 types. Lafzu.
Not that al-kalam is 4 types. It must fulfill these 4 conditions.
These are the today's these 3 types.
Yeah, that now we're talking aqsamuhu, meaning its divisions, meaning al-kalam. All of them will be one of these 3, as we just demonstrated. Right? So yeah, don't confuse the 2 issues, because al-kalamu, at the beginning, the author mentioned that in order to explain that, in order for al-kalam to be considered correct,
Is it kalam?
yes, it must be al-lafdhu, it must be al-murakkabu, it must be al-mufidu bil-wad'i. Now we've moved on to an analysis of what al-kalam comprises of, and it comprises of these 3 parts. Right? So the next statement, فَالْإِسْمُ
يُعْرَفُ.
Right. Now it gets exciting. Right. فَالْإِسْمُ فَالْإِسْمُ يُعْرَفُ بالخفض. We'll write it here. بالخفض. بالخفض فالاسم يعرف بالخفض والتنوين
دخول الألف
دخول ودخول
لله دخول الألف
ودخول الألف
واللام عليه
واللام عليه وحروف الخفض حروف الخفض. So the author continued, فالاسم فالاسم يعرف. Al-ismu meaning the ism that we're speaking about here. فالاسم يعرف is known or recognized. Right, so now we're talking about how do we identify al-ismu.
Right.
Okay, فالاسم يعرف بالخفض. So we're going to explain each of these terms. بالخفض. So the first indicator of al-ismu is al-khafd. وَالتَّنْوِينِ, that you will know.
Yeah.
In fact, you know what al-khafd is too, but we're going to explain that in a moment. So the first is al-khafd, the second is al-tanwini, وَدَخُولِ al-alafi. I've written al-alafi, it's ali. Al-alafi wal-lami alayhi. So what's al-alifu wal-lamu? It's al.
Alif lam.
Right? Alif lam. Wa dakhul al-alifi wal-lami alayhi. On it.
On it. Alif and lam.
Right? Alayhi. Wa huruf al-khafdi. And huruf al-khafdi is the huruf of al-jar. Right. Okay? So that's the meaning. فَالْإِسْمُ يُعْرَفُ بِالْخَفْضِ. Al-ismu is known by al-khafd. That's the first indicator. وَالتَّنْوِينِ, the second indicator. وَالدَّخُولِ الْأَلِفِ وَاللَّامِ, and entering alif and lam alayhi, upon it. So that's the third one. وَحُرُوفِ الْخَفْضِ, and huruf of al-khafd, which is huruf al-jar. Is that clear?
Yeah. So it's going to be tanween and alif and lam and huruf al-jar.
Well, there's four here. So we're going to begin with al-khafdu. Khafdu. Al-khafdu. What does al-khafdu mean? Al-khafdu means lowering. What does al-jarru mean? Lowering.
Yeah.
Right? Bringing down. So, why did Ibn Ajrum use al-khafdu? Because al-khafdu is a mustalahun, because al-khafdu is the term used by Ahlu al-Kufa. Ahlu al-Kufa used al-khafd. Who are Ahlu al-Kufa? Well, in grammar there are two schools of thought. There's Ahlu al-Kufa and Ahlu al-Basra. So they call it al-Khufiyun or al-Basriyun. There's two schools of thought here, right? Which makes it slightly easier than the madhahib, because there are four or more, right? So you shouldn't be too concerned about this. But the point to note is, amongst the people of Kufa, the grammarians of Kufa, they refer to al-jarru as al-khafdu, right? The people of al-Basra, they refer to it as al-jarru, which is what we use too. Al-jarru is the majority opinion, and it's what we've always used. So therefore, this is the difference between them. That the people of Al-Kufa, that Ibn Ajrum is affiliated to, or was affiliated, is now deceased as you know, according to them they use al-khafdu and not al-jarru. But the majority opinion, as we mentioned, is of Ahlul Basra, who use al-jarru. So al-khafdu, this is the first alamatun of al-ism, the first indicator, right? So therefore, if we find a word such as waladin, we read waladin, this ismun, and we find that it is makhfudun, right? We don't want to confuse anybody by using makhfudun when from the very beginning we use majrurun, right? So we will refer to it as being majrurun even though the text states al-khafd. If you find a word which is majrurun, or according to Ahl al-Kufa makhfudun, then that is the first indicator that it is what?